Blackberry Blossom. It's a fiddle tuning. Gosh, it just sounds so clear. It's really nice. Really nice. Process Tonewood for musical instruments for people all around the country, some people out of the country. And so basically what our job entails is finding the trees, flagging them in a veneer yard usually, and then collecting those logs, taking them to our, so we have a sawmill about 15 miles south of here. Travis cuts up the tonewood in the billets, we dry it in a barn down there, and then we bring it here and process it. So all of this is mainly scraps from processing tonewood from the trees that we've cut.
Y'all go to different yards and look for the wood that you're going to get?
Yes, but we generally deal a lot with Weyerhaeuser because they cut the most wood. It's private land that they're cutting off of. So so they're taking a lot of wood out of there at one time. So they'll have a veneer yard laid out. We'll go through and say yes, yes, no, yes, no. And sometimes it's hard for them to pull 1 or 2 logs for us. But and it's getting harder. I mean, things have slowed down a lot, but that's how that process works. And Travis Travis is a sawyer now for 10 years, and he's really perfected the art of quarter sawing a log and getting the most yield out of it. Yeah, just for an example, like these walnut slabs are just slab cut off of a walnut log, right? If you're selling slabs, you get 100% yield. Quarter sawing tonewood, you're lucky to get 50% yield just out of the log. And then once you process it, you lose another 50% of that. So that's what's left over.
Really? You lose 50% after you go through the process?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of heartbreaks inside of a log. You know, from shape to bugs to staining to, you know, we bought a walnut log one time that had a little hollow spot at the end of it, and we're like, oh, that's going to close up, you know. That thing got bigger and bigger. There was about that much wood all the way down the log.
That was all on the outside.
It didn't even hold together when we cut it. It was like,
you can't take it back.
No, you can't. That was our biggest mistake.
yeah.
So what are you mainly looking for in those veneer logs? So are there telltales that you hope are going to?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If it's red spruce, you're looking for, of course, knots. It's got to be completely clear, and then we're looking for twist and grain, like width. It's got to be a certain grain pattern.
Right, grains per inch.
It can be crazy, and that's a tough one to do. You don't really know until you open it up. We basically buy everything that we can get a guitar out of, so you know, it just depends on size wise, because it's so hard to find.
Yeah.
And then with walnut or maple, you're looking for curl. You'll cut the end, split it, see if the curl goes all the way in, that sort of thing. And the heart size is important.
On the maple, can you pretty well tell from outside with the knots and bumps and stuff on it what the grain's gonna?
Yes, you can.
You don't know how far into that log it goes.
It could be like 2 inches. You know, you could have a 28-inch log and only 2 inches.
Just outer edge.
So you have to do a clip off the end and then bust that little round and then see how far the curl goes in. That's one of the important things with that.
And really too, you can't really see it until the bark slips. So when they drag it out of the woods and the bark slips, is when you really can see that. It doesn't show in the bark, more so in maple it does, but in walnut hardly ever. And cherry too. When the bark slips, you can really kind of see the topography of that tree. And again, you want to cut the cookie off the end and split it to make sure it goes in, because we've got maple trees, the curl went in that far from the sap. And it's just like, well, then you know, it makes a nice guitar, but you just have a little ribbon of curl at the center.
What main species do y'all try to use or buy?
Red spruce is what we try.
Yeah,
it's in cherry, walnut, and curly maple hard install.
That's usually your 4 main woods.
Yeah, we deal all domestic, local woods, West Virginia woods. We don't, You know, there's a lot of spruces out from other parts of the world, and there's a lot of maples from other parts of the world that we'll let those people do that because we don't have access to it. You know, what the beauty, what we have access to is we get to see it in the log or even in the forest sometimes.
Yeah.
We can flag trees right before they cut. You know, if we were doing big leaf maple from California, we'd just have to take whatever we get from them. You know, you can bet it won't be their best stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
They're going to save their best stuff for themselves.
So yeah, so basically what we'll do is Travis will mill it into billets, you know, probably anywhere from 2 to 3 inches thick. We'll air dry those on sticks, and it's the rule of thumb is 1 inch per year of drying. So if you have a 3-inch billet of walnut, the best thing you can do is wait 3 years before you cut it up.
So y'all just air dry everything and don't.
Yes, for the instrument world, kiln drying doesn't work, especially with hardwoods, because the internal stresses in that tree. You know, you can get a lot of case hardening where you'll have checks in the wood that don't show on the outside of the tree. So we've tried fooling with some kiln dried stuff, and we have yet to
Once
be
it's
able to.
case hardened, you just well burn it.
Oh yeah, no. Furniture makers might be able to use it if they're doing thicker pieces.
Yeah.
But when you start resawing that stuff, it just goes all to hell. I mean, hell, a kiln dried piece of wood will curl right off of a resaw because of the stress, not because of the moisture, because of the stress in the tree. So basically, Travis, you know, he'll be down to sawing. He'll be cutting long boards of this right here. It's a 1/4 sawn spruce billet. We'll bring it up here and we'll cut the defects out of that long board. Generally, they're like 6 or 7 feet long when he cuts them. And then, you know, we'll go through and we'll map out like, oh, well, there's too many knots here, or there's knot shadow, or there's stain over here. And we'll cut them to length for a guitar. This is 24 inches long. And that's about probably 8 3/4 wide. So once we get that, we'll surface one side. That's what it looks like in the rough. So you can see, you know, we put a template on here to make sure we can get around these knots. Join 2 edges of it. As you can see in this particular piece, you've got a big bug hole here, and you got blue stain in the tree. That's something you can't see when you buy the log. He sees it when he cuts it on the saw, you try to work around it.
What's blue stain?
It's just it's a sugar. It's the sugars in the tree basically are getting taken over by fungus early in the process, like when it's laying in the veneer yard, or if it lays in our yard too long in the sun. The sugars start to turn blue or red. There's some people that don't mind it at all, especially people like Ted who's going to sunburst it. You know, it's still a very valuable piece of wood to them. And
Tonally, it's not going to be any different.
no, in fact, there's even an argument out now that it helps the toe. So
I think someone who had a lot of that wood on their hands
Yes,
probably
it
came up
probably
with that
started.
argument.
yeah,
But, you know, to not waste it, that's,
right. And they're so hard to come by, especially red spruce. It's commercially extinct, and for us to be able to find trees big enough for guitars, it's few and far between. And we might get, if we're lucky, the luckiest year, we might have had 10 or 12 guitar logs out of 100. So it's, you know, we take every one we can get, and you know, if we can, even if we can save this from going to a pulp yard, have some stain in it, offer it to people who don't, you know, who don't look past that and realize how rare this piece of wood is, then it's worth it to us to do that. You know. So then, yeah, it's dry, it's billeted. We'll have a whole stack of these, and then, you know, one of us will stand down there and we'll just set the depth on the saw and just resaw tops. This represents about 1 afternoon of cutting on this saw. I think the best we did one time was 100 an hour, 100 sets. Yeah. So, and this is the thickness that they come off the saw right here. A lot of red spruce will have a dark towards the sap. That's just inherent of red spruce.
What is that thickness? About an eighth?
Right around 5 millimeters, 4 or 5 millimeters. It's right around 180 to 200 thousandths.
Yep.
So 3/16 basically to 1/4 inch is what we shoot for. It depends on if we're torfying it or not. Now I'll explain all the torfaction stuff later, but so this is the finish right off of the saw. You pass that around. That's the blade kerf on this saw. That hasn't been sanded or planed or anything. And it's pretty neat. It's just a
smooth.
yeah.
It's very smooth. If you surface one side, that's just from the billet, right?
Surface the billet side, and that's just to make sure that our first cut's flat.
Yeah.
that side was amazing.
And because if there's any twist in this, it'll the blade will follow it, and your piece will come out propeller a little bit. So,
It's a cool saw.
oh, it's a beast. We're gonna fire it up, I think, aren't we, Ted? This afternoon.
Yeah,
All right.
hopefully. That piece of sugar maple has a little rock in it, so hopefully we can get a slice off of it. I use for some sides. For bone.
Okay. We can also flatten it on a joiner too.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, here's some examples like this. This is a walnut billet here that Travis ran through. It's got metal in the tree. Can't see that until you cut it. This one, I don't know. Did you ever put the X-ray on that to see if it was
I think we can solve that, but it's
Alright.
still gonna be stained is the problem.
right?
That's why I quit.
So, there you go, one cut, and it's like, oh gosh. Well, there's a B, that's worth probably $20 a piece, you know what I mean? It's like, so yeah, there's a lot of heartbreak in it. We have in the past bought a lot of slabs from other people, other cutters, so we could have dry billets to run through quickly. And then you run into metal, and you run into, all kinds of heart checks and stuff like that, or run out. Like those 3 slabs right in the front here, you can see where the run out. This is a crotch piece right here. The run out goes like that. So that's not really Tonewood. That's why that hasn't been cut up. So yeah, I mean, basically that's probably a good example of a double A top. And real quick, I'll just explain red spruce too. I call this winter wood, the red grain. Travis calls it red grain. So, I've said this to some of you guys before, but you can really see the evolution of this tree. When it was young, it was wide open in a canopy, right? So this was after the first cutting of spruce. Grew fast, and then the canopy closed up and grew slow. And then there was probably a cutting or a fire or something that cleared out the brush, took off again. So that might be a third cutting in that same patch of woods. And then the canopy closes up and the growth slows. And it's really interesting because there's some trees that are this tight all the way across that have they're basically in a virgin forest. Some people really like this red grain in their red spruce because it's a lot stiffer than red spruce that doesn't have as prominent a red grain. So if you did a deflection test on this, with a certain weight, let's say a 5-pound weight in the center, and you did it, you could do all the spruces that way. This would probably be one of the stiffest spruce there is.
Okay.
So for strength to weight ratio, this really lends a lot to a guitar because you can dimension it thinner, which means your response is going to be faster when you're playing it.
Right.
So bluegrass pickers really love that kind of spruce because it has so much attack when you play it. And then there's all kinds of grades. Like this is that's probably a double A, but again with the color, which is also inherent to red spruce. Some Sitka has that. My guitars that I build, I feature that. A lot of my tops have color in them because I like the way it looks. As opposed to like European spruce from Eastern Europe, is snow white.
Yeah.
You can hardly see the grains in it.
Right.
Which is kind of cool, but I like to have a little character. Anything else? I'm just trying to find a AAA top here. Like this is a really nice top. Unless I'm missing something.
Let's put a tag on that one. I'll come back and buy that.
This one is really, really tight grain. All right, so. You want the whole thing cut? binding and fingerboard. Don't make fun of my bench here.
So I noticed your blocks are not mahogany. What are you using for blocks?
Catalpa.
Okay.
It's actually much lighter. I'm like an arch top builder. When I build, I try to keep the weight as light as possible.
Who built the workbench?
I did. Thank you. This was my winter project 2 years ago.
It's
A
not
COVID relief bench.
And mandatory bottle opener right here.
Oh yeah.
Luke, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
That's before we get into guitar building.
Here's the setup off from you guys a year ago.
I think boards and billets and build this.
Okay.
So for those of us who
Okay.
go under the
Yeah. So it's about right for me. I mean.